I'm Andrew Eshleman. I've been a Grace parishioner since 2012. And yeah, we interrupt this programming to talk about money. Right? Like many of you, I'm not particularly comfortable talking about money. When Kevin Walsh emailed me to ask whether I might talk about this today, my initial instinct was to say no. But I decided to lean into it a bit. Even my partner Alice and I don't find it easy to talk about what to do with our money jointly. So when you think about it, that's interesting, right? There are no doubt lots of factors that explain our reluctance to talk about money. Some of them are probably broadly sociological. It seems like some cultures find it easier than others to talk about these things, and I think Americans are maybe uniquely inhibited on this front. And then there are other factors that are more unique to us as individuals. When I thought about this, my first thoughts were to maybe start talking about what shaped me and my ideas about money from my original family setting, but I decided that's a longer story and I only have a few minutes. So here's something that's an ongoing challenge for me and maybe for you too. How we spend our money can reveal important things about ourselves. As Jesus says, where your treasure is, there your heart is also. Money is actually not unique in this revelatory role. Anything that's precious, in part due to its limited supply, can function in the same way to reveal, right? For example, the same thing is true of how we spend our time and give of our affections. When I read that sentence, I sort of was struck by the fact that we use the same verbs, right? Spend our time, give of our affection, right? Same verbs we use with money. And when I say it's revealing, I don't just mean that it can be revealing to other people, though that's part of what complicates the conversation between me and Alice. It can also be revealing simply to yourself. So let's just focus on that sort of personal revelation. What might we learn about ourselves when we reflect on our spending patterns and contemplate revising them? As many of you know, I'm a philosopher, so I'm going to engage in a 1-minute digression into some philosophy. So as I was thinking about this for today, I started to make some connections with a kind of spiritual and moral freedom I've been writing about as a philosopher. It's the freedom to increasingly act and feel appropriately in relation to what's right, good, or best. In the ancient world, lots of schools of thought were trying to articulate this goal and to develop practices in pursuit of it. For example, you can find it in ancient Stoicism, which actually influenced early Christianity, in Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism. In each case, the diagnosis is that we're prone to become problematically attached to certain things through our desires, and in a way that prevents us from acting and feeling as we really should. In other words, we experience a form of internal bondage in relation to our own desires. So not a bondage imposed from outside us, right, but something inside that binds us. So in order to be increasingly free, we must engage in practices to weaken, if not break, those problematic attachments. Back to our spending patterns. These can reveal our desires, fears, and values. And these, in turn, can sometimes express attachments that prevent us from acting and feeling in ways that would be best. That's just the sort of stuff to feel vulnerable and defensive about. So no wonder we're hesitant to talk about money. Right? When it came to wealth, Jesus was sometimes pretty hardcore about breaking these problematic bonds. To a rich man requesting to follow him, he says, "Go and sell a few things you no longer enjoy and give the money to the poor." Oops, right, I misread that. Go and sell all your possessions and give the money to the poor, right? Phew. Occasionally we hear of someone who seems able to break their problematic attachments in a wholesale way, in the way that this kind of uncompromising Jesus recommends. But that's not me, and I'm guessing that it's not most of you. The nice thing about pursuing the moral and spiritual freedom I mentioned is that it can be pursued incrementally, bit by bit. Practice, as they say, makes perfect. Or if not perfect, at least inches you further along a path, right? Inch by inch, going further along this path that's rich in things that are much more important than money and what money can buy. Pledging is such a practice in spiritual and moral freedom. It's one way to weaken problematic bonds we may have towards money by allowing us to recalibrate what we most care about. I pledged grace, and earlier this year I also pledged separately to the development process for our campus, which will eventually result in new programming space for Grace and Grace Institute. If you've not been contacted about that yet, look for that in the future. We've simply put a pause on that while we reconfigure our development plans. I hope you will join me in these pledges. And if you're already pledging to Grace, please do consider an increase in this year's pledge to address the rising costs, of conducting our ministries. It's yet another opportunity to grow our freedom bit by bit, inch by inch, and take joy in the things this allows us to do for others. Thank you.